Right, here we go. Thank you very much, Jane, for agreeing to be my podcast guest, and welcome.
Thank you, Graham.
And we'll come back to you in a moment, Jane, because I think it would be a lovely thing to do for you to talk through that background, which is intriguing me. And then we're going to say hello to Georgie as well. Thank you, Georgie, for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a total pleasure. And I was just saying that I feel great gratitude to everybody who's agreed to be on these things. And I do feel great gratitude to you both, actually. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But let's come on to Jane. Can you just do a bit of background narration? What is that beautiful picture behind you, which I know will intrigue anybody, both people who will watch this? It's usually an audience of sometimes up to 3. So I think the all-time record was...
You're not known for comedy, but when you do, it's quite funny.
It was 60 or 70. No, everything I do is comic. It's just nobody can really tell. It's comedy with no laughs.
Background.
I call it comedy with no laughs. Yes. What is that?
I don't know what, like everything in life, why do we do what we do? I don't know. But for some reason, I felt drawn to wall hangings. And this particular room is the first room ever, because I've always moved around, that I've been able to build as a meditation room. And I've been meditating and teaching mindfulness and all sorts of things for some years. And I found a couple, not these, which were okay. And then I came across this guy who's called Puma Yana. I might not have pronounced that correctly, but they are exquisite and they're beautifully detailed. And the colours, as you can see, and he does a whole range of them. And I also, at the risk of sounding woo-woo, feel they have an energy of their own, probably infused by the attention that we give them. But I've got another one that here, which the other side. So they're very energetic. And since I've had this, I've had it as a backdrop of my cushion and sit every morning. I've started doing 4 or 5 international half-hour sessions online.
Really?
And 20 minutes of which we sit in meditation together, but it's incredibly powerful given the, during the pandemic where we've not been able to travel, we've sort of had to keep distance from each other. In the silence, you can connect at some other different level. So this has been part of the picture behind me is the one that I use on Facebook and LinkedIn to just share and offer the space, meditation space.
Because
that's a very long answer. But,
it gets you, I imagine it gets people as close as they can possibly be to meeting personally, to have that sort of detail in the Zoom meditation, I suppose.
I don't know. You never know how it affects people. And I'm not sure I've even tried to rationally make sense of it.
No.
I've just intuitively felt that it's meaningful to me, and therefore, if I'm comfortable with it, that's probably enough.
Yes. The more I invite you to say about it, the more it will lessen its effect. I think so. Let's just appreciate it. I will just appreciate its beauty and hope for some of its energy. My daughter's just been picking her up. I just picked her up from town just now, and she's been buying crystals, and she's very, very into this. And I'm hoping she'll read Andrew Anderson's book, which I just got. It's one about the bears, which is really interesting. Anyway, she's got all these crystals, and we've just been chatting about it on the way back. She haggled with the guy on the market stall, I gather. And she was just showing them to me, each one by one, as we came back to Stratford in the car. And she was saying, that's for this, and this is for this, and I don't know what that is. And she was talking about charging the crystals. And I think it's lovely that it's not you know, you've got to keep an open mind, haven't you, really?
And if it ignites something within us, it brings something alive, which I think connects to your first question, why do I love theatre? Whatever it is, it opens up the heart and the attention and the connection. And it does feel, because of what we've all gone through, as if something more pure, is that too simplistic a word, is coming through in some way. Painful in so many ways, but also beautiful in others.
Let us come back to that. And I'm going to put a pin in that and come back to it, because I did say that I want to just say something to Georgie, and explain the connection between the two of you for my international audience. My friend in Norway, and my friend in Italy, and my friend in America. That's my international audience. But Georgie is also in a very intriguing looking electronic cave there. And perhaps, Georgie, would you like to plug your partner's show?
Well, it's not really. It's they do a sort of fantasy football league, and they do a podcast about it each week. So I suppose if you weren't there, you wouldn't necessarily know what it is. But they've got this incredible setup. I feel like I'm on Radio 1 or something. I feel like Greg James is going to come in through the door and interview me in a minute.
You look it.
Yeah, I feel very, very cool. But it's called either the Draft Cast or the Draft Cast, depending on where you're from. I call it the Draft Cast.
Oh, right.
Of course. But some may say Draft Cast. Depending on if you're from north or south or east or west.
And he has his podcast, and that's why you're in this very. I think it's setting a new standard.
I mean, I said I was going to do this on my phone and my earpods, but I mean, this couldn't say no to this setup, could I?
You absolutely couldn't, and it's just like Jane was just saying. Really, it is quite astonishing, isn't it? How well, I've been reading a lot of Buddhist material over the lockdown, which has been beautifully enlightening, I suppose, without to coin a phrase. But one of the things that I'm sure Jane knows about better than I do, and perhaps you do, Georgie, but one of the lovely images that I read about is this notion of the lotus being born from the mud, and that mud has beauty because beauty comes from it, and that is my sort of estimation of where things are, really. You know, that we're very resourceful as human beings, aren't we? So let's come back to the gratitude, and then so the gratitude I feel is this. First, Georgie is the deputy chair of everybody's favourite local theatre group. Isn't that right, Georgie?
And the social secretary as well, as if I wasn't busy enough. Just add some more work in there.
Well, quite.
Yeah.
Well, quite. And Jane has been spearheading, along with others, the it's not called Director's Call anymore, is it? What's it called?
As it morphs, the name keeps changing, but the latest name is A Creative Space.
Yeah. And that is what it is. That is what it is. And as somebody was saying in the most recent meet, not that any of us are into sort of competing between groups, but there are very few groups have said, let's do something like this. Let us come back to Georgie then and talk about what can you tell people about being you've only just become deputy by popular acclaim.
Yes. It's an interesting position to be in because I'm overseeing the production planning process for 2022. So I'm helping the group. I have no decision making. I'm just helping guide the group towards making a decision, because it's a democratic group, so all the members have a choice about what plays we put forward. So we're kind of deep in the middle of that process at the moment. We've got readings coming up in the next couple of days, which is very exciting, but I'm still finding my footing a little bit. I'm still finding my way. So once we've read the plays, one of which belongs to you, Graham, then we'll have a vote and we'll see what happens. And because it's democratic, there's no definite yes or no. Just because we've got 2 plays doesn't mean we have to perform 2 plays. But it's a very exciting time. And I think what we need as a town and as a nation is theatre next year. So it's actually quite a big decision for the group to make what we perform. Because I think it's going to help shape us and help us with our recovery into the next kind of 12, 18, 24 months.
Let's come back to that as well. And let's go on to Jane for just to deepen things a bit further. It sounds a bit like, I said a bit like Ali G. Now, what's his name? What's the actor's name? Darn it.
Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He is a disturbing genius.
Yes.
Is he not?
Yes.
Let's go on to Jane. So Jane, you talk what creative space. Tell us a bit. Oh, it's a terrible impersonation. I should stop it instantly. Where did creative space come from? What's the purpose of it, and what has Second Thoughts been doing in that regard?
I think it came from the start of looking at plays and a shortage of directors, because if you put a play forward, you need a director. So we decided what was the best way to encourage people to dip their toe in the water. And just as we'd set up a day-long training, we went into lockdown. So we suggested, why don't we do something on Zoom? So we did, and it has happened every month. It's only about 90 minutes. It seems to have been well represented primarily by writers and actors and directors. And so it made sense to say, look, this isn't just a director's call. Nothing happens with just a director. How do we all work together? And the more we met, the more we realized the quality of what we do. It really comes down to, who do you enjoy working with? How well do you, and you, if the better you know someone, the better you're able to work with each other and enjoy working with each other. And then, of course, new ideas came out of a different environment of living, on our own. You, for example, spearheaded this huge, great initiative. And it seemed like a fertile ground for something new to be born. So I think it's just a touchstone for us to bring and express and voice and shape what's emerging in theatre with us all in our different sort of spaces and different skills. And nothing can happen unless we keep connected, I don't think. So I don't know where it's going, but what I do know is it has life, it has energy, it seems to be fun. And
there have never been less than, I think I've been to most of them, there's never been less than 10 or so people there, and sometimes a good deal more than that. And each one, what's so remarkable about it is that, and this is to, I suppose, to pay a little bit of gratitude to you, Jane, because you and others have been instrumental in bringing this about and creating a sense in which people feel confident enough to turn up, and if they want to, stay completely silent the entire time. And that takes some confidence in our noisy world. Being silent and quiet is not at a premium, and takes courage, I think. And also, but also to the other end of the spectrum, where people have said, do you know what, I wouldn't mind casting, rehearsing a piece that I've written. And we've had, that's been at every broad, I think every meeting, hasn't it? If it's been an original piece of writing.
Different things have come up. I mean, we really should credit Bernard and Ian, who are very much part of this in different ways.
And we've had the last one was David Hope, wasn't it? David
And of course,
Hope's
quite a
piece.
bit goes on in between the calls.
And you and I were in that.
Yes, yes.
And they're not seen by anybody else because they're deliberately, because I suppose the intention is to just develop things quietly and to increase the confidence level, I suppose, because we're not intending these things to go public or to be, are we really? Are you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's an agenda.
No.
I think that's what's so, if we were to run it again, like the Courier, which we did with Nick.
Oh, that did go public, yes.
You put it together. I don't know, who knows where it goes, but if you really say, what is it all about at the end of the day? Is it the finished product or is it the journey? And I think what we seem to be enjoying is the journey. And what is the journey?
Yes. Yes.
So we've got the structure of the plays, the 3 plays a year, and yet we've also got bubbling in between these little shoots of ideas.
Would you mind telling us a bit about your journey, Jane? And because I know it's a very fascinating one, but don't feel you have to or need to or anything at all. But tell us a bit about how you arrived in Second Thoughts and what you what kind of theatre work you've been doing in your life and so on.
Do you know? I remember as a 4-year-old being the brown bear and a nun, because I went to a convent, putting her arm around me in front of the whole school and saying, "Didn't Jane do the brown bear well?" And being absolutely sort of one of those memorable moments as a child, not understanding what's going on, but just gravitating towards this, I don't know, whatever theatre gives you. It opened up something. And I think I did then theatre the whole way through school, drama, and then I joined a drama group. And then when I left school and went off to university, I didn't do it. Then I decided to join the army because I thought they do quite a lot of theatre, never did it. And had a gap of about 20 plus years until I then went to Singapore and suddenly decided I'd sort of dip back in. And someone said, "Oh, yes, there's a wonderful expat group that's been going since the 60s. Went along as a laugh and got a part and sort of rediscovered this, whatever it was I'd felt as a 4-year-old. And then one thing led to another. So got quite involved again in Singapore. And then when I came back to England in 2017, was looking for a group. And I looked at various ones on the websites, but for some reason, the one that could happen on the day that I happened to be able to attend, it was Second Thoughts. And I remember going to the British Legion and Ian was there. And that I just thought, what a nice group of people.
So let's just back up there a bit. You joined the army, and one of the reasons was it possibly had scope for theatrical life.
I'm talking about not in uniform rather than out of it. Although one could question both.
Do go on. I'm happy to cut out anything you like, but
my father was based in Germany. He was military, and I in these sort of far-flung, well, it was not that far-flung, but there's quite a lot of extramural sort of activities that go on, like theatre. There was a thriving tri-service theatre, and of course in a peacetime army there's plenty of time and it's funded, and I thought, oh wow, I could do that and leave home and travel the world. And of course none of that really happened. I was mainly stationed in UK and I had to work quite hard, but
may I want to ask what you were stationed in what role you were stationed here?
Well, when I joined, it was the Women's Royal Army Corps, so we were all badged WROC, and then we were seconded to different units. So you did ordnance or infantry, but mainly in a support role, training role, administration. Yeah.
And how long were you in the army?
It's just 17 years.
Wow. And you weren't in the forces when you were in Singapore, or you were?
No, I left the military on voluntary redundancy in 94, I think it was, a long time ago now. Joined the John Lewis Partnership for 6 years.
Wow.
And then had a complete sort of midlife crisis. And someone said, well, what would you really like to do? And I said, I'd love to go back to Singapore. I had no connections there. But I do sense, I'd started meditating by then, and I do sense that there's something in us that opens up. And despite having no connections, something enabled me to get a job over there. And I went for 2 years and stayed for 17.
Good Lord.
So it's funny, isn't it? How
it is. Life is like that sometimes, isn't it? You know.
Yes.
It's not the plans you make; it's the life you lead. You know, to paraphrase John Lennon. Is it John Lennon? Life is what happens when you're making other plans. That's one of John Lennon's lines. But I think we have the title to the podcast, Jane. I think Georgie will probably agree that. What's the brown bear line again, Jane?
The 4-year-old brown bear with the big ears, with the socks on my ears.
What did the nun say to you?
Didn't Jane do well? Or something, words along those effects, you know, something that you were.
What a superb brown bear.
Yes.
There's no higher accolade could be. Almost literally. And since we've name checked Andrew Anderson at least once today, I think you would agree. Bears get everywhere in life. Yeah. And then you came to, so that was your second thoughts, Jenny. Let us skip over to Georgie. And Georgie, if you were thinking as I was, then gosh, I've led an unexotic life. Never fear. Weirdly now, to give you thinking time, I was thinking of exactly that on the way in today, on the way went to pick Kira up, and I was thinking about, you know, what one might write in the future, and I thought, you know, well, it's terribly interesting. I was thinking about my actual mum and dad, who are my adopted mum and dad, and they led a very unexotic life compared to my biological mother in particular, who forms the subject of the play that you referenced earlier, Georgie. But I was thinking, well, actually, it would be, and I've written about that, to add to everyone's nausea, not to my own, but I'm sure to everybody else's. But mum and dad lived quite different lives, and to all intents and purposes led very, what one might call, ordinary lives. But how much more interesting and challenging it would be to write something about my mum and dad. That's what I was thinking, because they didn't get locked up in a prison camp in Siberia or get deported by Stalin, you know, and so on and so on. And there is no such thing. This is where I'm coming to, essentially. There is no such thing as an ordinary life, is there? You know, there's no such thing. I suppose Alan Bennett takes that as his theme, doesn't he, really? That all of his characters are what you might think of as ordinary, uninteresting people. But of course, all of us have had lives that others would regard as unbelievable in one way or another. So feel free, Georgie, to share any secret unconfessed sins or parts of your journey that you don't mind sharing with us. How did you get into theatre, and because you're like Jane, you're both extraordinarily talented and so on. Did you? So tell us a bit about how you developed that interest, and how you arrived at where you are today.
Well, I had a very similar journey to Jane, actually. I started when I was quite small. I remember the first sort of amateur play I did outside of school. I did Bugsy Malone at the age of 11, which terrifyingly was nearly 17, 18 years ago. Long time And then since then, I kind of worked my way through groups. I I started with a group in Evesham, and then I joined Rogues and Vagabonds in Stratford, which Amanda used to run. Then I started studying more intensely at the Hadland School until I went off to uni and studied drama. And then I started with Second Thoughts sort of just before I went off to uni. I did a couple of shows with them. And then I came back, rejoined again. And then I've been around ever since, really. I graduated in 2014, which was another terrifying sort of 7 years ago, I think. Is that maths right? 6 years ago. I don't even know. And I've been doing all sorts since then. I've been doing on stage, off stage, directing. I want to say writing, but I wouldn't class myself as a theatre writer. And I've just been getting involved wherever I can, and then building a bit of a good reputation around theatre groups in Stratford. And then just as I sort of branched out to Leamington, groups in Leamington, lockdown hit. So that's put a bit of a stunt in there. But I'm and then outside of theatre, I'm a singer as well. So I do concerts, and I do sometimes at the Christmas market in Stratford. I've just started performing at the Music Cafe, which has just opened as well. So I like to have lots of different pies going at the same time. It's quite the journey. Wow. It's not quite as exotic as Singapore, but I mean, it's as good as I can do.
Well, good Lord, though, Georgie. I mean, I feel exhausted. No doubt Jane does, hearing all that in such a short life, because she was dead young and everything. Sorry, slipping into my Sacha Baron Cohen there. You was dead young. I just can't do the accent. I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's a real shame. I love impersonating people, but I can't do that. You was very young. So Bugsy Malone was your first one. Who were you in Bugsy Malone?
I was just in the ensemble. Occasionally I walked around with...
Georgie? Just
the ensemble. I had one of those cool guns that they had that splats out all the squirty cream. So that, to me, was one of the highlights of my career. Running around stage, splashing people with whipped cream. But it was my first one, and I think I auditioned thinking I was going to be the lead. And then I realised that's not how auditions worked very quickly. And I ended up just sort of running around. And for my first show, it was great fun. Got to learn loads of songs. I made some friends. So for someone who's like 10, 11, that's quite a big deal. And it was in the Evesham Arts Centre, which I don't know if you know. It's quite a big venue.
I do.
A big venue for a little 11-year-old.
It really is. It really is. That must have done wonders for your confidence there, mustn't it? Do you think, or did it not?
Definitely. I think I did a few shows with that group, and then I moved on. But having those foundations of this is how a show is rehearsed, or this is how a show kind of runs through the tech week, and then this is us putting it on, it definitely gave me a strong understanding of what is expected of me as a performer from a young age, and what I'm supposed to be doing, rather than just messing around at the back and causing trouble.
I can't imagine you messing around, George. You're so
sometimes I was terrible. Sometimes I used to just giggle and laugh and talk. I learned discipline very quickly.